Hi, I'm Anthony Salcito, Vice President of Worldwide Education for Microsoft. And in my role, I get a really great opportunity to travel around the world and see classrooms and leaders who are really making a difference and really showing us the way to drive change in education. I'm often asked for my travels, who's doing it well? What are some examples? And I've collected amazing lessons learned throughout the world, seeing inspiring examples of really making change possible for classrooms. I thought I'd share some of them with you now. The first one I've certainly recognized and really reinforced every day is that it starts with leaders. Great schools, great environments often have a great leader who's driving that change, often because of their own will and their force of nature. It's critically important to celebrate and support teachers for sure, but we need leaders to drive the culture and the atmosphere of a school and raise the expectations for everyone, for parents, for teachers, and certainly for students. A great leader can see innovation, scale and share ideas from across the halls in schools, and really sustain a longer-term vision to drive that impact. We need to support leaders to really make that possible, and Microsoft is working through a number of institutions to provide tools and resources aligned to the Microsoft Transformation Framework to provide a guide for leaders to establish a vision and drive change across the school. The next lesson learned is the importance to leverage process to drive your plan. Certainly, great ideas require a process to replicate and scale across a school and a system. Often good ideas are underdeveloped because the path to getting that innovation, getting that magical moment happening was not something that was easily understood. And especially in schools with leadership and school teachers who change often, having a common language for driving and scaling innovation is critically important. At Microsoft, we've leveraged the 6I process, which is just an example of a process framework where school leaders can use a roadmap to drive thinking and to ensure that everyone is aligned to driving that mission forward. The 6I process starts with introspection, and this is where you ask the questions about what you're trying to do. What's your vision? How do you get stakeholders, students, educators aligned? What are you doing it for? Having that foundation is often critically important and sometimes often overlooked. The next phase is really investigation. This is where you look at your school and other examples for best practices. What can you learn from? What went well? What didn't go well in the past? What skill sets and capabilities do you possess in your schools, and what others do you need to acquire? That's critically important to set the foundation to enable you to drive change. The third step is critically important, and that's inclusion. That's when you bring feedback from the constituents inside your school, like students and teachers, get feedback from parents and community officials, look at workforce needs to drive, are we thinking through the inputs that we can drive the change that's needed? Next, we innovate. And this is where you take those foundational elements, what you learn from those first three phases, to actually dream big of what you're trying to achieve. The next phase is implementation. And this is the fifth phase of our journey thus far. But it's often where folks start. And this is where you actually do stuff. And this is the most fulfilling in many ways because you're actually making progress and delivering activities. You're purchasing, you're deploying, you're training, etc. But often this one needs to be informed by those other four components critically. The fifth one, implementation, is critical, but certainly not where we need to start. And then lastly is inquiry. And this is where you constantly question, are we doing the right thing? Can we make it better? Can we use data to drive outcomes? Across the board, this is just an example of a process framework, but establishing process across your school and system is critical to ensuring you can drive the change to scale that you need. The next phase is really to understand to build from the inside out. Too often around the world, technology and other things come to a school. We layer on new approaches, new technologies, new ideas onto the existing fabric of a school. What we've got to do is actually build from within, get ideas, get leadership, get the atmosphere of a school changed, and then bring ideas and technologies to a school from that innovation and that foundation change. It's a simple concept, but when you get leaders and stakeholders inside the school thinking about how they can change, how their environment can change, the other things that you'll bring in are going to find a home much more effectively. Certainly, we need to be clear on our expectations. This is something that is constantly needed, both as you set the agenda for school change, but really as you think about the increasing transparency that you need to provide to external constituents, to maybe press, to senior officials driving government change, and even certainly to parents and students. Understanding how do you set expectations and raise the expectations of the culture and atmosphere you're trying to build is critically important for all leaders. And successful schools that I've seen, they celebrate their expectations. There are posters on school walls identifying what it means to be in that school. What expectations do they have of teachers, of educators, of parents? It's very, very clear to be transparent because you're going to need help. You're going to need to bring others along to say, this is our big ambition. We need everyone to help contribute to it. Next is really to innovate versus automate. Too often in the world of education with technology, what we've been doing is acquiring technology and then automating our old learning environments with these new digital devices. Schools need to push that aside and actually think about how they can drive innovative learning paths. Start with the question about student achievement. If you start with a device, the questions typically will be about how do you use the device? How do you get students connected to the device from old curriculum and old books? When you start with the student's learning journey first, how do you enable every student to reach their potential and achieve more? You can actually think about technology's role in service of that versus the other way around. It's critical to pivot on student impact first and use technology as a means, not an end. We've got to think about technology also more thoughtfully as it relates to devices. Certainly technology and devices are used in classrooms and a number of environments, from bring your own device environments to cart environments, certainly a range of different devices in the palm of a student on a student's desktop. We've got to think about how devices work. When are they right for a learning environment and when they are not right? When can we think about how do we acquire devices in a sustained way from a budget standpoint so we can ensure that we've changed the environment of cost basis inside of a school to afford technology more consistently? And then lastly, we've got to think about pedagogy as it relates to the device. When does touch and pen work better than a keyboard? When is keyboard with touch and pen more efficient for a student? How do we think about security and privacy? How do we think about making sure that every student can get access to the right device for the needs that they have, from assistive technology needs to the environments around bandwidth in the home, etc. Thinking through a device plan holistically is critically important. Certainly the pricing and the acquisition of the right device is a good place to start, but you've got to push further than that. Think about how you can use different dynamics to fund, different stakeholders to support, and different methodologies to get the right device for the right teacher and student moment. Next, we've got to move schools faster than classrooms. Certainly we know this globally. There are amazing things happen that signal the future of education change. These are happening often in an individual classroom level where an amazing teacher has often persevered to get her classroom to do more and achieve more for students. But what happens in those examples is the school typically doesn't embrace that change to scale. A teacher across the hall may be doing different things, and there's no culture of innovation to celebrate. You've got to think about the system. How does the environment change in a school? And ensure that you think everything from space design to the language that we use to the expectations of curriculum that we set. Drive that change first and create the foundation for teachers with that foundation to plant amazing seeds that will blossom innovative ideas that can be driven across a school to drive even faster change to accelerate impact. But you've got to think about the whole school change. And again, get back to the earlier comment, it starts with leaders to drive that change across the environment. Parents certainly are important as well. And the parent's role in a digital world is even more important because the parent can not only oversee students' work and have a broader voice and window into what students are achieving every day, but the need to bring parents along into this digital future is an important lesson to learn. When you provide a device and training to teachers and students in your school, make sure parents are aware of how to use technology, how they can play a role, and how they can guide their children to be safe online. Critically important. Certainly data is an increasingly important and focused area around the world of education. Folks are using data and insights to drive interaction and understand how do they improve their systems. We've often used data historically to look at a vision of the past, how students progressed, how they graduated, what's the performance of individual curriculum modules and maybe performance of a teacher. We've got to move from data as an accountability measure and a view of history to be something that can inform decisions. How do we make learning more predictive and personal for students? How can we use data to drive the right outcomes versus actually report on the past outcomes? Effective use of data is critical, and it's certainly going to be the agenda for leaders as they drive change for years to come. And certainly data is at the heart of the power technology can have to truly drive individual impact for every student. Certainly, and finally, the last lesson I learned, and this is reinforced, thankfully, every day that I travel around the world and visit an amazing classroom. I know the tremendous impact our teachers are making on the lives of their students, the change that we need in the industry, and the real impact that we see with schools transforming. I really understand the critical role teachers need to play, and we need to celebrate them and those leaders for their inspiration, their leadership, their perseverance to drive change. It's important for government officials to create an agenda to celebrate and acknowledge that teacher, to make sure that she and he feel great about what they're doing. They don't feel afraid to fail or try new innovations. They feel like they're all part of a journey of exploration and innovation to drive the change as possible. Now, I'm excited about these lessons. I continue to learn more every single day to drive the change. And at Microsoft, we're inspired by these examples of great teaching to focus on helping your students achieve more together. Thanks for your continued support, and I look forward to seeing and celebrating all of your inspirations and innovations on my blog, Daily Adventures, in the future.